on one side of the property, it was an old white man who owned that land. Well, niggas wasn't gonna have nothing better than what he was gonna have. So what they did was, what he did was he blocked the road. He was the sheriff of Newberry, so he blocked the road.
To keep them from buying?
To keep them from getting on the land.
Dad, who owned it? It was his though.
He owned a section, and then on the other side is where our grandfather.
But you had to go across his.
But you had to go across his to get to theirs, and he so he blocked the road off. Mom, you remember when Sam Henderson blocked that road off? Calvary Church Road.
I love you so much.
And he said we own that land anyway.
Oh my goodness. So
And they've been trying to sell it, and they couldn't sell it.
because
And they finding out. They finding out because he never. I think it's gonna boil down to he never owned it. And then
whose property is it?
I don't know yet. But they but if like my dad and them can get their hands on it, they would take it. Cause it's the up. They will own almost the whole road
Yes, they is.
if they got it.
Ma'am.
My father was born in 1911, and his father was a sharecropper. He grew his own tobacco. He had plenty of fruits and vegetables, and that's how he made his living. He bought cows, 2 cows, Esther and Bessie, and he paid $10 for each cow. Life back then was kind of hard. He had 99 acres of land given to him by his father, which I really don't know his name. And they also built a house for him to start his own sharecropping business. He had brothers, John and Jim, who also too did the same thing. And one worked with the railroad back then. We had a lot of places that we weren't allowed to go in the front door. We had to go in the back door to purchase food or anything we wanted. We had certain places we could go and we could not go. My grandmother, she had told me about once the first time she ever saw an airplane. She said they ran for their dear life because they had no clue what it was. And also, too, my grandfather, my mother's father, had gotten killed in a coal mine somewhere in Virginia. And when the people came looking for my grandmother, she was so afraid because she had 7 children that they were coming to lock her up or put her back in slavery. Therefore, she refused to tell them who she was. But it was the people from the insurance company telling her as long as she lived, she would collect a check, but she died and never received a check. That his name was Dad Amos, and he was really big in the building of Newberry College. He has a lot of plaques and so forth over there, and he was from the Jalapa area, where they also, my grandfather, Marcellus, had all of the land that they had given him, but they had put it in writing like he had sold it to them, so that people would know, I guess, perhaps, that he had a black child. Now, Granddaddy's Marcellus' mother, we still don't know her name, even though we searched many records and unable to come up with anything.
Dad Amos is Granddaddy Marcella's father?
Yes, that's what we were told.
And he gave a lot of money into building Newberry College?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. And I didn't know that until I was talking to, I'm a caregiver, and I was sitting with this white lady named Mrs. Kirkland. Then, at that time, she said that they was plying mules and digging up rocks for the football field, and they named it Kirkland Field after him. But she was the one who told me that Glad Amos, and that was the first time I ever heard the name other than hearing it from my older brother, who was born in 1928. And he was the oldest, so he told us that Dad Amos was my grandfather's father. I never known any of them to be slaves or anything like that. Now my grandmother's sister, which was Aunt Janie, she lived to be 116. She was part Indian. She and my grandmother were sisters, but they didn't have the same father. And she told me a lot of things about the slavery back then, how difficult the times were and everything. I never knew many of them that had went on to get an education, but they was busy trying to make sure that their children had the education that they'd never had.
As I think about wealth, education, and freedom, for African Americans that ties in nicely to each other. Because first of all, we had to fight for our freedom. And in fighting for our freedom, some of us even had to fight, we had to also fight for wealth. But there were so many people like Madam C.J. Walker, who was extremely wealthy. And then they had children like this one. And then they made sure that they were educated, and they didn't just accept anything. They believed in fighting for education. But we go all the way back to when we were chained and brought to this country from different from the continent of Africa. We were stolen from different islands that were on the coast, such as Togo, Ghana, Benin. All of those are on the beautiful coast of the Ivory Coast of Africa. So once we initially came into Boston, and you know about Cinque and all the different slaves. But on our route here, so many of our forefathers died they were in bondage, they weren't fed and all after they were captured and brought here, so they died along the way. Once they got here, they were sold to work on rice plantations. A lot of them were brought to islands, and they were even brought to the coast of South Carolina. And they were, we still currently have an island in South Carolina where people make sweetgrass baskets. Well, that's how they started making money to build wealth. But then along the way, we also had people like Madam C.J. Walker, who became a multimillionaire. She was a philanthropist, and she invented the straightening comb and other hair products because we wanted our hair straightened so that we can look like white people. So we always tried to do that. We also think about when it comes to us and growing and prospering, there are people with skin tones such as mine who had where our forefathers, our parents, our grandparents, whenever they wanted to, they took advantage of them. So we have children that were mulatto children, or just could go for white, or just fair-skinned children that belonged to the slave master. But through it all, we prospered. If we look at Frederick Douglass was one of the greatest orators, and he always talked about African Americans and how proud we are of our heritage, what we know, how we know it, and what we did. But the thing that stands out for me with Frederick Douglass is his 3 words. He said, agitate, agitate, agitate. And if you know what agitate means, it means to change, and keep on changing, and we just can't stay stagnant. And that's what's embedded in our heritage. The goal, the drive to do more, to never sit still, never sit back and accept little things. We always want to get more, get smarter. I'm very fortunate to have gotten my high school diploma, because some of my siblings didn't get a high school diploma. But that didn't stop me. My grandparents continued to push me, even though they had a 3rd grade education, and I got a bachelor's degree and went from there to a master's. But at that time, we as blacks could only be nurses, we could only be teachers, we could only be preachers, but we weren't allowed into the other segments of the world. So I went into education because I did not want to work on a farm. I did not want to work in a factory. But I could always hear my grandfather saying, you can do more, you can do better. So we were always pushed into education. Wealth came too, but it was always a fight for us because the white man could always keep us back with wealth. So we didn't understand, and today we still don't quite understand wealth. We have some very rich and some powerful people like Oprah Winfrey, who started from nothing, and she's extremely wealthy. But we have day-to-day people who are wealthy. I have a friend of mine, her name is Carolyn Hunter, and she's a millionaire, lives in Charleston, South Carolina. So we build wealth, but we build wealth in different corners of the room and not usually together. So when I think about your three questions, you asked me about us as a people, you asked me about education, and you asked me about wealth. When you say any of those things, you're talking about African Americans, and you're talking about how powerful we are, how great we are, how education means so much to us, and how we're not going to stop until we get more and build more. Any other questions?
Nothing.
Hey, go on, my Jamaica! Jamaica! Babe, if my hair fall out because of facial.
But this is a catch. You can buy
Oh,
What?
you gotta answer the question.
Okay, I'm sorry.
This going into the bloopers.
Okay.
As I read it.